So I fiberglassed one side of the combing. Smile, act like they're light. Otherwise I will get another comment that I'm making the boat too heavy. Hello, welcome back to our refit project where we rebuild a Cape George Cutter 36. My name is Aladino and behind the camera right now is my wife Maya. You might remember that 2 episodes ago I created the cockpit combings and they have a bit of a different shape to them. Now that I've got them into my desired shape, it's about fiberglassing them and preparing them to bond them in place. And meanwhile, Maya has some tasks for the interior of the boat. We've got a full episode for you guys, so let's get into it. I fiberglass the combings first because that's how I do things. I like the waterproofing that comes from fiberglass, and also in this case it's really adding strength back to the combing because I didn't laminate it out of many thin layers which would make it very strong. Instead I cut it up. There is butt joints, there is curves, so the fiberglass will really also tie it all together again and strengthen it. And also I really recommend using epoxy whenever working with wood. Epoxy is way superior in waterproofing and in adhesion, whereas polyester is really easy to peel off after it has cured. It doesn't have that same tenacity. Polyester resin is also a little more water permeable. That's why there's things like an epoxy barrier coat to actually waterproof a hull. So huge shout out to Total Boat for all of the epoxy that they have supplied us with. First, I install this hardware again. Well, just dry fit it because it's what kind of supports the combings until they are through bolted in place. So these are the winch bases, but they also double as support for the backrest because it gets through bolted on here. This side works fine. The other one has never been perfect. I remember when I inspected the boat the first time, this was never installed properly, so we just need to bend this flange out 1/4 inch. But that's no difficult task. But let's just put it on for now. And there's so many ways of doing a winch base, of accomplishing this, but I actually really like this. I don't have the full image in my head yet, but there's very likely lines that need to run aft, so it's nice to have this free and open because we could run the lines through here. Maybe there will be rope clutches somewhere. I think this is a pretty neat design. Usually, or traditionally, it would be a wooden block, different layers stacked together to a height, nicely shaped and rounded, and then you have your winch mounted on that. But yeah, then there's also bronze pedestals, but they also have 3 legs that actually go to the deck. I really love how this one actually gets through bolted through the bulwark, which now we can through bolt as many things as we want through the bulwarks. That's one great benefit of the new construction with no wood. And since the metal is not bent to the correct angle right now, like I said, I'm placing this behind it to force it to a better position. Yeah, well, that's it. That's where it will be. And we've also gotten many comments about a scupper really being needed at the end of the combing, and I agree with that. The thing though is that I didn't really know where the combing would end up when I was glassing the scuppers. Yeah, we don't have one now, and it's something that can be added later on. Let's just see how it performs first. Since I'm done with the fiberglassing, I'm not eager to start again. All the existing scuppers though, those are in the original location. That is the lowest point in the deck. There is a bit of shear to the deck, of course, so water would still flow down and actually exit the scuppers. Now just a little tap with a hammer. I want to see where these are after I remove it. So let's just see how deep. How deep is this one go? Out here. It should be visible. I'll bring up the other combing on starboard port and do the same thing. And yeah, in a moment here I'll bring you up to speed about sanding the decks. All right, so the combings are now ready to get glass on the other side, so I removed them now, and let's move on to talking a bit more about all the sanding that I've been doing. So yeah, I'm happy to announce that after a week of sanding, or maybe a bit more, I've gotten a lot closer. I started off doing the flat surfaces, and I looked back on photos that I had to know where the glass overlaps. And that is where I start, because I know that that is a high spot. And that is, for example, here, or at the bow, you can see that I have the glass overlapping here, so I have double layer. What I do want is one consistent layer everywhere. Same with the glass that we put over the bulwarks here. This tab here, I expect that this is higher, of course. So I sanded that down first, and then I try to get everything even from there. And for the decks, I used the Bosch 6-inch sander, which is a beast. It literally has a turbo mode. Now in this mode, it's oscillating, so it's more of a vibrating motion. And instead, if you flip it to turbo mode, the entire disc spins. So it becomes a mix of an orbital sander and almost a grinder. I was doing this with 80 grit. Yeah, it's also 80 grit of what? Not 80 grit of anything. As you know, I'm a huge fan of SIA abrasives made in Switzerland. When I was doing the flat surfaces, then I actually do want a bit of a hard material backing paper, because that helps in getting a flat result. As well as there is different discs materials. There is softer discs, there is harder discs, and that also depends Do you want it to follow the curvature a little bit of what you're sanding, or do you want it to be as hard and flat as possible to give you the flattest results? So flat with a bit of a harder backing paper for flat surfaces, and then also these, because these are just mind-blowing at removal rate. These are the ceramic line, so the abrasive material literally is ceramic, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it sounds like an ad, but these really perform like the same amount as 4 discs of more traditional aluminum oxide paper. These are really long lasting, so I highly recommend these. These are literally amazing. If you're looking for CA abrasives in the States, then National Abrasives carries them, and instead in Canada, I would gladly direct you to jjscanada.com. And then instead for the bulwarks, this is very precious to me, as many of you know. It has taken us a long time to get to this, so I really don't want to sand through the fiberglass. The best would have been hand sanding, but that would have been torture. I moved on to this one. That's the oscillating multi-tool. It isn't the greatest for sanding, to be very honest. You have to keep in constant motion, not to leave sanding marks. It leaves very visible sanding marks. But this is not yet the finishing stage. And then corners, I hardly ever use machines for corners because it's just too quick to sand through a corner. So these I've done by hand. And now, so much talk, but yeah, also a little disclaimer, I am taking shortcuts. I do want to get it done, so I'm also not being the pickiest that I could be for a job like this, but also yeah, I think it will be totally fine. I'm so excited to get it all transformed to white. Yeah, that's gonna be a nice moment. He is no Aladino. Either you're an Aladino or you're a Goofus. No. Smile, act like they're light, otherwise I will get another comment that I'm making the boat too heavy.
Well, and we're not adding weight compared to what was there before.
No, exactly. I mean, it's always a give and take. We are adding a bit of weight for the glass. On the other side, in my opinion, they should have been glass from the beginning. On the other side, we removed a little bit of weight because we are removing a quarter of the closed horseshoe, so to speak. So yeah, it's always all in balance.
Well, and like the bulwarks, they were solid wood. We've made them high density foam, which is a lot lighter.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It all kind of works out to be somewhat similar.
It is a mix, yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, though, one has to keep in mind that this boat is 23,000 pound empty. So it's not like we put it in the water and, oh, wow, realization, it is a heavy boat. Well, yeah, it is, but not because of our doing.
Yeah.
It's intended to be. There we go. While I worked on the combings, Maya had a different project.
We have the handrails, which go inside on all the teak trim that I varnished before we left the USA. And these have the exact same red stain that all of the interior teak trim had. So in order for it to look good and to match on all the varnished wood, on all the newly varnished wood, these were going to have to get varnished as well. And of course, the first step of that is some sanding. to try and bring them back to their natural teak color, and that's what I'm going to get started on today. The only thing that I'm really nervous about them with is that I did such a good job varnishing this trim, and I don't know how to, like, because we're gonna have to screw them in place or something before I varnish them, right? Because we have to put bungs over the screw heads.
Ideally, yes.
And I really don't want to have to drip all
and
over
I mean,
these.
Guess why they were oiled? It is a fiddly piece. Ideally, we would install them and then tape around and then varnish, but then you cannot varnish the parts that are not accessible, ideally, right? Which, yeah, we just have to decide which would be fine, and otherwise one can do one coat first on the whole thing and then one installs.
Yeah, I'll
There's both
figure
options.
that out later.
There's both options.
I don't want to start varnishing right now anyway, because this weekend we're going to the Sunshine Coast to go see my parents, and you are going to work on the bowsprit a little bit, because that's over there, so that'll be an upcoming story as well.
Totally. Yeah, I guess we have to brainstorm how best to do this.
Aladino installed the freshly sanded teak handrails. I think my plan is to put the bungs in over the screws and then do a really good job masking off the trim beneath, and then just being really careful to apply the varnish to the handrails. And yes, perhaps it would have been easier to do this all at once instead of first the trim and now the handrails, but we are not perfect. It was a big rush leading up to the boat move. We did not think of it and we didn't have time for it. But I do think that I'll be able to do a pretty decent job just by using lots of masking tape and some careful brushwork. Huge thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I'm really excited to see some primer go onto the decks pretty soon. Extra big thank you to our patrons for always being here and making this all possible. We just appreciate you guys so much. In return, we post real-time updates on Patreon so that you get to know what's going on in real time whenever we do things like open houses or whatever else. That's always announced to the patrons. So huge thank you. And an extra big thanks to the folks whose names are now appearing on screen for always going above and beyond to make sure that Magic Carpet keeps being produced. We'll see you all next Friday. Bye.